the main thing here is do people understand what narcissism is? Because I feel like a lot of people, a whole lot of people, they quick to point out narcissism in others, but not point out their own narcissistic traits. And like a lot of people would assume like narcissist. Oh, you're a narcissist, so you're because you valued yourself. Like there's a line between valuing yourself and being a narcissist. If someone didn't do something that you wanted them to do, that does not make them a narcissist because they did what they wanted to do. That just means they just didn't value what you wanted them to do. If you're dating someone, I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. Like I think it really just goes back to what I first said. Like if you they're not doing what you want, if they're not doing what you want them to do, does not make them a narcissist. Like they're their own human being, they're their own person. People will quickly call someone they're dating, oh, they're a narcissist because they said I was disrespecting them. Maybe you were. Maybe you were. Maybe if you look at their life and how they value things, maybe their perspective on how they were raised is that's whatever you just did and said, it could be seen as disrespect. That does not make them a narcissist. That just means you never took the time to actually understand the person you were even dating or going out with. Most people don't. They just act off their body. Like whatever they feel in their body, whatever they see. They that's what they want to do. That's what they see. um, and they don't point out their own narcissistic tendencies. Like there's this video that I'm really kind of basing this off of, and there's a couple other things, but the one is there's a young woman, she's complaining about a date, and she said her date was a narcissist, but I'm like, nothing in the date that she said made that man a narcissist. It wasn't something that he didn't do anything. He said, "Hey, can I get your number?" She said, "Yes." She gave him the number. Then she agreed to the date. Then he paid for everything. Nice restaurant too. Paid for everything, and then said, "Hey, do you want to go to another restaurant?" He said, "Yes." Um, she said yes. So she said yes. She drove herself to the other place. They get there. Obviously, this gentleman. So I think age wise, the gentleman is older. Okay, he's like at least, I want to say he's over 60, right? And then she's 38. Okay, and she seen he had money, so there we go. That's our premise, right? She seen he had money, and she agreed. Um, he had a driver waiting outside of him when he went to the store where she was pouring. Was she pouring? She was pouring taste tester bottles or whatever at whatever store it was. So they get over to this restaurant, and they're in the second restaurant, and you know they're uh, they're talking or whatever. Everything's fine, and then she doesn't get into detail over what happened. She just kind of says that, oh, the way I think he said something back to her like, "I would never treat you or disrespect you the way that you disrespected me," and had something to do. She said he felt some type of way about how she was interacting with the waiter, and I'm like, if you were openly flirting in front of this man with the waiter while you're on a date with him, that is messed up. That's messed up. That's messed up. I don't like if it was a man and he's flirting with the waitress, like openly, like giving her like the time of day while on a date with you. That's disrespect. That means there's a lack of interest even in you, which that man should have. Yeah, that man was right by calling out that disrespect, because that's disrespectful to start, what I'm saying, talking to somebody else while sitting there on the date with the person, like across the table from you is your date, and you're openly flirting with somebody else. I don't care who is on the other side, man or a woman. That's disrespectful. Like if you don't want to talk to that other person, then just come back to that restaurant. You know where they work now. Just come back there. Oh wait, you won't come back there because you can't afford the place. That's so crazy to me. But yeah, so she called that man a narcissist, but he wasn't a narcissist. He just, he just felt like he got played, which he did. He did. He got played. He got played because she got up and left, and then she went home. Because she drove herself there, so she drove herself home. And yeah, I feel him on that. Like that was disrespectful. But I believe her behavior, and her posting the video like that was more narcissistic than the guy was for feeling disrespectful. Like that guy feeling like that's self-preservation. That's not narcissist. He was looking out for himself. He said, "Hey, I don't like the way you're making me feel right now." And I don't think that's even a problem for him to say it the way that he said it. He said, "Hey, I feel like you're disrespecting me by doing such and such." And her thing is like, "I do what I want." Like, no, that's not the proper response. Like, especially if you're on a date with someone allegedly that you were allegedly interested in. But no, she was faking the funk to get what she wanted, to be able to go to this restaurant and go to that other restaurant that she couldn't afford that was outside the price range. But anywho, um even I'm trying to think of another example of somebody that got called a narcissist that really isn't even a narcissist, because I don't think we understand what narcissism means. I'm gonna read the textbook definition of narcissism right now because I feel like that's relevant. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Mhm. Okay, so narcissism. Narcissism is excessive interest in or admiration of oneself or one's physical appearance. Psychology wise, selfishness and involving a sense of entitlement, lack of empathy, a need for admiration as a characterizing personality type. The psychoanalysis, self-centeredness arising from failure to distinguish the self from external objects, either in very young babies or as a feature of a mental disorder. That is narcissism. Okay, that's narcissism. That's narcissism. That's the book. That is the book definition. That is how doctors have defined narcissism.
So I wanted to gently point out to you that the fact that you can't think of another example of someone calling out a narcissistic behavior who's clearly wrong, I think says a lot about the situation. Obviously, some people are going to get it wrong. They're going to project, right? Um,
Mhm.
but I think the instances of that happening are a lot lower than people may think.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by the incidents are a lot lower, like of people being narcissists?
Yeah, I think typically when someone is called a narcissist by somebody else, there's a reason for it. Now, you can have narcissistic qualities and not actually be considered textbook narcissist, right? And I don't have a license in, psychology or psychiatry, so you're welcome to take my opinion with a grain of salt, but um it's it's become obvious to me in the dating world especially that there are a lot of opportunists and narcissists out there.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like in this particular story, in the story she gave herself out of her
Hmm.
own mouth, she was the narcissist in the story because she looked at him and took advantage of him for what she wanted. She was only there
Well,
for what benefited her.
couldn't you argue that they're both narcissists? I mean, he's dating 20, 25 younger than him because he thinks, he deserves to have a younger woman like a trophy wife. And she, pulled the stunts that she pulled and then put that video online because she's clearly a
I
narcissist as well. I think it's two people, two narcissistic people.
I
Uh,
don't I don't there in that definition of narcissist, there's
mhm.
there's nothing in there for you know what I'm saying, like, so for instance, like, he picked somebody that was attractive to him, right? If this
Right.
was the same scenario, right, and they both found each other just attractive, and the money wasn't involved, okay, then we have both of them being narcissists. But if
Uh-huh.
you find someone attractive and you ask them out on a date, just a date, it wasn't even that he said, "Yo, you have to be my girlfriend" or all this other stuff. Like, it was a date.
Well,
She agreed.
like I said, I think the fact that he's going after women who are, half his age is a narcissistic quality in and of itself.
I don't
Like I said, I think this is a case of two narcissistic people finding one another and seriously clashing, because when two
know.
narcissists get together, it's not going to end well, because neither one of them have the empathy to put forth into a relationship,
So
and that just doesn't work.
I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
cougars that date down, they're narcissists as well, right?
I would argue
Because
yes.
because they
And I
because
hate
they want
that term. I really hate that term. Um,
to.
and
But I
mostly
didn't
because
know another
there's,
way to put that age. Like, I didn't want to put like a age range, a true age
mhm,
range on it. But it's just we kind of like when you say the term, everybody knows the general idea. It's like a huge gauge gap. It's like pretty big, significant.
right. Yeah. I would argue that women who do the same thing are narcissistic. Maybe not complete narcissists. And maybe this guy isn't a complete narcissist as well. He just has narcissistic qualities.
I don't feel like that's a label that we should be labeling those people as narcissists because they're just dating who they find attractive and want to date. It's the same concept. Like, whether we like, the thing is, she's a grown woman, she's almost 40,
Hmm.
he's 70. If he felt like, hey, I'm gonna talk to her and see what happens, and she agreed to it, you know what I'm saying, he just happened to get lucky. It's the same way if it was a woman that was 70 and she wanted to get with a younger guy. Like, I'm not going to say like she's a narcissist for going for someone she found attractive. Like, that's just how human nature works from the beginning of
But
time. Like,
the
people date
psychology
people
involved in wanting a
attractive.
mate that is that much younger than you is really interesting. It speaks to things like, wanting a trophy partner, um wanting someone younger and vulnerable and more naive and grooming them, and it's pretty twisted, you
I
know.
don't know if you can groom someone that's 38 though.
Oh, you absolutely can.
That's no.
Anyone can be
You're a
groomed.
whole you're a whole adult. You've lived a whole life. If you're able to get groomed at that point, I feel like you have something mentally that is not all the way right with you to where you didn't fully finish developing yourself as an adult.
I just want to point out that when I was 35, I was groomed and forced to become a human trafficking um victim. So now I consider myself a survivor. And I didn't realize what was happening until it was far too late.
Oh,
And I
okay.
don't think there's anything wrong with
That's
me mentally, but I
whoa.
was absolutely groomed.
Um, huh. Um, okay. That's wow, that's different. That took a left turn there. Um,
Well, I mean, it's not really that different though, because when you're talking about grooming is the act of preparing someone to abide by your nefarious wishes, right? So anyone can be groomed, oftentimes without even realizing it, because we don't pay attention to these red flags, you know, or we see them and we make excuses about them and put them out of our mind. And then suddenly we find ourselves in a position where it's almost too late to do anything about it. I mean, it's never too late to do anything about it, but you feel very stuck and very vulnerable and not safe. And that can happen to absolutely anybody.
okay, okay, okay. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Oh,
Um,
I mean, I appreciate it. It's a process, and I'm only using that as an example because, you said there is something inherently mentally not stable with people, in their later years. being groomed. And I just wanted to kindly and gently point out to you that anyone can be groomed. Absolutely anybody.
Okay, so hmm. Okay, that's I feel like that's still different than the concept of people dating people just off of pure attraction. Just like, oh, this is who I find more attractive. You know,
Um,
that's not. I don't feel like that's the same concept of being nefarious and actually grooming someone. Like what happened to you, what happens to numerous children, like it's not I don't feel like that's the same concept as, yo, I want to go on a date with this person.
Well,
Like
it
it
is when you're talking about pure narcissism. My abuser is a textbook narcissist and sociopath, if not a psychopath. But I don't know if either of those two terms are still used in psychology today. Um, but he's textbook, and it started off as an initial attraction, but developed and de-evolved into something absolutely nightmarish and horrible. And when you are talking about a person dating someone 30 years younger than them, there's absolutely going to be grooming involved. And that can look like things like showering them with money, um, allowing them to live beyond their means, getting them addicted to a particular lifestyle, and then trying to pull the rug out from under them so that they feel like they can't survive without this person. It looks different, but also the same in every instance. Like it follows a pattern.
hmm, okay, okay.
But that goes for men and women. I don't want to make it out like it's just men who are narcissists. Clearly there's female narcissists out there too. And women are just as capable of grooming as men are.
Yeah, yeah. I still feel like that assumes a lot. That assumes a lot, and I don't like assuming things about
Okay.
people. Like, cause to me that assumes he went in there with malice, and he went in there intent to cause harm. I don't see where he has yet to cause harm or do that action. I can't be in his head, and I can't be in
Right.
women's head that have dated down. Like I
Mm-hmm.
I can't. I'm not in their headspace. Like you could genuinely like love someone that's like, oh, and you guys have a horrendous age gap. I mean, I'm trying to think of like a celebrity couple that it's the same way, but they're
Mm-hmm.
just two adults that met under certain circumstances and they found each other to be interesting and they wanted to keep dating each other. And
Um,
that happens in regular life too. Like there's people, they have like 9, 10, 11, 12 year gaps, and I don't think that makes it
I don't think that's a huge age difference though. You know, you're talking about like one generation gap. I don't think that's anything to write home about. But certainly 30-year difference, that's a huge generational gap. That's gigantic. And I feel like in order to get someone used to the idea of dating someone that much older, someone who could literally be a parent to you, uh, you entice the person, um, and then you kind of bully them into staying with you, and so forth and so on. There's, like I said, there's a pattern involved, and people who date so much younger than themselves, men and women, do so because they feel like they're entitled to dating someone that much younger, which is a textbook narcissist move, entitlement.
but I don't feel like that's necessarily entitlement. Like if they are interested in you and
Mm-hmm.
you are able to do, like, go on the date, then get them to go on the date, then cool. Like the thing is she said out of her own mouth, because
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had the TikTok in front of me. She said out of her own mouth, I seen that he had a driver. I seen that he was wearing a Versace shirt and all these other things.
Hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to flirt with him. She went out of her way to get with him. It wasn't
Hmm.
that he was necessarily out here saying, "Yo, I'm going to talk to this young woman that's pouring these samplers of this champagne or wine." He didn't start off his day that way. He went to the
Right.
store to pick up champagne and wine. She just happened to start flirting with him because she was trying to get like a tip and all these other things, and then she gave him her number, because she wanted to be around him and she wanted to hang out with someone of a higher class than
Well,
her.
you could argue that she's even trying to groom him in a way. It's like I said, it's very
I,
insidious and nefarious.
yeah, but I don't feel like that. I don't feel like necessarily like in either scenario, grooming is the word for what they're doing. Like, and I don't like using terms out of,
Out of
I guess,
context.
out of, well, not necessarily just out of context, but just like I feel like as a society we're too, even with this term narcissism and in now the term, like, we're too quick to just throw some word on there that's like now our society's like buzzword. Like if you say grooming, like people automatically go, oh my god, blah 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 blah. Like it becomes nefarious, immediately becomes nefarious. If you say narcissist, it becomes immediately bad. But I feel like in his instance, when she called him a narcissist, he was just talking about his own self and how he preserving his own feelings and how he felt on the date itself. Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
think he was necessarily a narcissist because he was led to believe something that he wasn't. She just simply deceived him. I don't feel like it was.
That's a really good point, and one that I hadn't thought of, and I appreciate you cluing me in. He may not be a narcissist. I mean, I don't know the guy, and again, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I can only speak to my own experience, and having learned what I've learned through my healing, phases, and reading so much, trying to understand what I went through, and uh, the psychology of my abuser, even to understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, and because like for instance, like someone that I can agree is a narcissist, like for instance, like, or at least bare minimum shows high traits of narcissism. Kanye West, that's an easy one.
Oh God, yes. But I would
That's
argue
an
Kim
easy one.
Kardashian
That's
is
an
a
easy one.
narcissist as well.
But Kim is also one too, because
Yes.
they're both trying to control each other's narratives.
Hmm. Definitely. Uh, I I think most people in Hollywood at least exhibit some kind of narcissistic personality traits. And I think you probably have to adapt to those in order to survive that culture. Um, I
Hmm.
can't I can't speak to that. I know there's a lot of people like that in my industry, which is music, and that's why I don't
Hmm.
date musicians, which is ironic because I am one, right? But I
Right,
have found that trying to date other musicians is just a heartache waiting to happen. So I don't do it.
right. That makes, which makes sense. It makes sense. I still but to what am I trying to say here? Like, to stay, like, I don't think we understand like what narcissism is, because I feel like it's thrown around so loosely
Hmm.
when it could simply just be someone that is trying to self-preserve themselves and look out for themselves, and there's nothing wrong with having self-respect, you know what I'm saying, stand,
Agreed. Agreed.
and you're
Definitely.
and wanting to, but yeah, wanting to protect yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like where I believe that there's a line, and over
Hmm.
that line becomes narcissism, where there's a total disregard for someone else's input or how it's affecting someone else's life. I feel like once you cross that line is when you're
Uh-huh.
stepping into narcissism. Because when, as long as you have not caused that other person harm or disregarded their feelings, I don't think you're narcissistic yet. I think you're just looking out for yourself and you have your own standards. The moment where you totally disregard that person's physical or mental well-being or emotional as well,
Uh-huh.
um that makes you, to me, an actual narcissist. There has to be actual disregard.
I think what you're trying to say is that you believe the what's the word I want to use? The not respecting of somebody else's boundaries that they've placed for themselves
Mm.
is a narcissistic personality trait. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, yes, because I feel like
Okay.
that shows a lack of empathy.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. And I think, and I'm not saying narcissists are everywhere, but again, I think there are a lot of people out there with very narcissistic qualities, right? And
Hmm.
traits. And we live in a society that's ruled by narcissism almost. Like, how many likes did I get today? How many views on Instagram? So forth and so on. And that clout has turned people into like mini narcissists.
Hold on. I'm trying to type something in here. What is it called?
So let me ask you this, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
because I feel, I well, we ended our relationship about a month ago,
Uh-huh.
and this person owes my friend $100, and I got a hold of him yesterday
Hmm.
on a kind of public place and called him out and said, look, you've blocked my friend from being able to get a hold of you. You owe him the money. Be a decent human being and pay this person back. I vouched for you and now I feel responsible. So my ex tried to say, I left all this stuff over at your house. Why don't you sell it and then you can pay him back? And I said, that's not, that is not how this works. Like, I'm not in charge of your debts. This is your responsibility. Take care of it. Like, would you not agree that that's a pretty narcissistic thing to do or say?
um, yeah, yeah, that was very disrespectful. That was messed up.
Yeah, I mean, and I think dating in today's age is filled with stories like that, with where people are not necessarily narcissists, but they do and say very narcissistic things.
I think people more than that. I feel like people um they're not being taught values anymore. Like
Hmm.
the standard for what it takes to be a respectable adult, or what is allowable. I
Hmm.
feel like we have not set good standards anymore. It's just kind of
Hmm.
just like, oh, okay, you can just do whatever you feel like doing. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Go do that. And or say that thing or whatever, because there's always a community that you can find that will agree with you. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Into this what is it called? Down the rabbit hole, and you're just down there, and you're down there with a bunch of other people, and you don't know that you're wrong. You don't know
Hmm.
that all you guys are wrong. In some cases, you can go down a rabbit hole, and everybody down that rabbit hole could be right. However, more times than not, most people at the bottom of the rabbit hole are wrong. Like
Right.
somewhere along the line, the right people stop. Like when you exist too far in any extremity, you end up being wrong.
I,
But to
I agree wholeheartedly.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
You
and
know,
and they
and that unwillingness to understand the other person's point of view,
mhm,
and that typically happens on extremist uh, viewpoints, right? Is
mhm,
is a textbook narcissist move as well, because it shows a distinct lack of empathy.
mhm,
You know, um, but that narcissism feeds into it, or the narcissists feed into one another, and
mhm,
they say, well, you're absolutely correct and I'm going to validate this. I mean, they don't say that obviously, but they validate one another and perpetuate these really terrible ideas, and
mhm.
allow people to think that their ideas are correct. And you're right, it's a horrible problem.
Right, right, and I yeah, yeah, I agree. It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
And
and it's pervasive and everywhere, right?
okay, can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a
Of
question?
course. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you a question that was asked of me. I didn't give an answer because I didn't know how to actually respond to this. So
Okay.
the person what they asked was, um in today's society, who do you feel like is more narcissistic, men or women? And I didn't know exactly how to give that answer because I was just trying to I had to add I needed more clarity. Like, are you asking
Hmm.
just in what scenario?
Uh,
'Cause I
yeah, I think it's pretty even keel, right? I don't think one side is typically more narcissistic than the other. I think because of things like maybe toxic masculinity, and the way men are brought up today, men could possibly be a little bit more narcissistic than women, but if they are, I'd say it's by a slight margin.
okay. So then let me ask you this, okay? Because if I go back to the interest of if I go back and I read the definition of uh narcissism, right? Excessive
Uh huh.
interest in or admiration of oneself or one's physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I feel so that's the definition of narcissism, right? To
Right.
actually exhibit. So my question is, with how people use social media, it's
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you go through the social media lens, I feel like women, in a way, just from what I've seen, have men beat because I've watched women literally post pictures, and if it doesn't get enough likes, take it down and repost it like 3 weeks later, like nobody didn't see it, just so they get the correct
Sure.
number.
It's a validation thing, right? We're taught that we're nothing if we're not being validated, especially on social media. And it's horrible and it's creating narcissists. But I want to point out, like, okay, Tinder is a good example. Did you know for every woman on Tinder, there's like 300 men? I mean, the disparaging numbers are remarkable. It's insane, and
But
the messages I get on Tinder are insane, absolutely insane.
right.
Like if I don't immediately reply to somebody, I get these gross messages, or I get called any number of slurs, and it's these people who feel entitled to my time and my effort,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and I don't see women behaving like that, but we are looking through different lenses on on our respective sides when asked that question. So I was kind of expecting us to have different answers, but I respect your opinion,
Right. So with Tinder,
Uh-huh.
like you're aware that, like, as far as Tinder is concerned, like there is like they've actually done the study of like how people date on Tinder, right?
Hmm.
Like on and how they swipe based on who they find people attractive. Now, women women literally only want to swipe on the like literally the same, like high, super highly attractive men. Like
I
they go
mean,
like
you're
seven
speaking
within.
to a woman right now, and I don't
No, I'm
base
saying
my criteria on that.
on the data. I'm just saying their data. I'm saying
Uh-huh.
their data. They only swipe and go out on dates with between the 7 and 10 range. The 7 and 10
Oh,
range.
I
Seven
just
and 10.
want to point out that numbering people
No. I'm
like
just
that
saying
is
their data. I'm just saying how they did the data. They did like this blind whatever
uh-huh.
rate or whatever, and then they had people swipe. So it was this broad whatever. Like, so just take it with a grain of salt. Like, it's not me. I'm just saying what they put out.
I mean, I just want to point out real quick that no scientific study worth its salt is going to label women a 7 to a 10, right? Like
No,
that in and of itself is a
these were
very
men.
narcissistic idea.
These were men who were labeled between a 7 and a 10 by women.
Well, I mean, it goes on both sides. I just, the idea of rating someone on a numbered scale from 1 to 10 based on attractiveness and ultimately worthiness is a very narcissistic concept in and of itself.
But I mean, that's the whole point of a dating app. The whole dating app is narcissism in and of itself. But but yeah, it is because you're
I'm
literally
sure it could be.
swiping.
I'm something called sapiosexual, so I read all the bios. I'm not necessarily attracted to aesthetics. I'm attracted to someone's knowledge and an ability to hold a conversation. So if someone doesn't have a bio written that intrigues me, I don't swipe on them.
Right. So that's you. I'm just saying this broad more. It was like 10. It was like, was it 1,000 women, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
1,000 men. Like they surveyed and did this study, whatever. So they had a good ranking scale for these people that they had on swipe on.
Uh-huh.
So the men, it had like this arch to it where it was about even with less on the with even though there were more obviously the attractive women were obviously getting swiped more. There was still enough men swiping on the women that were deemed unattractive for the sake of the study, but it wasn't the same way with women. With the
Mm-hmm.
vast majority of women, they were not swiping right on unattractive men. Like
And
whether they were looking at height or his build or whatever it
sure.
was,
And
off
out of
just off first
curiosity,
appearance.
did this study uh, highlight that the men swiping on the undesirable women probably looked at themselves as being better than and having to uh, go down on their personal whatever list um, to date like below them in order to get a date? Because I've heard that referenced a few times. I'm not wording that exactly correctly, but do you mind if I come back up?
Yeah, yeah, you can come back. You can come back up. You can come back up. Yeah, it's cool. You can come back up. Okay, let me hit this button real quick. And bingo. Well, she should be back. Okay, I think it made her leave or something, or she glitched. But yeah, so to finish though, the study was basically saying that. Hold on, I'm gonna try and just find it again. I'm gonna try and find it real quick. Dating. Doing good.
Good, good. Awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to just come up and I love discussions, but I do believe narcissism is a really overly thrown out word. We label a lot of people this way just
Mm-hmm.
because of the society we live in, but to me, narcissism is no different than ADHD or autism or bipolar or any of these mental disorders, which simply tells me that in our society, there is an issue with our environment as we grow up that causes us to have to create brain, mechanics and different, functions to survive. And that can be things like narcissism, where they completely shut off the ability to have connections or be who they are because the painfulness of being shamed or being, themselves is so deep because they're sensitive enough to really not handle how bad they feel that they can't, be accepted. They'll never let it ever happen. They make a fake reality that to them actually is reality. It's not even what you see. To them that is reality. It has become like, I will always be on guard. I will always make sure that I dominate. I will always make sure that I believe I am awesome and I'm the best and I know everything because I will never ever let myself believe that I'm, you know, not worthy or that I'm not smart or better, because that's too painful for them. Some people are that sensitive to that
Hmm.
criticism. And it's a protective, way of a behavior. Your brain's like, I can't handle that stress and that pain. So they create a way to, avoid it. And that's their way.
Okay, okay, okay. That's. I agree with that. That I actually like that. I agree with that. I agree with that.
It's a lot like
I,
addiction too, if you think about it, right? Because addiction, it doesn't matter what you're addicted to. It's all the same thing. It's just somebody trying to attempt to solve a problem of like, I'm in such emotional distress and pain, and I can't handle it. How do I escape? It's not healthy, but that's how they figure out how to escape at the time, right?
right, right, right. Okay, so okay, I'm going to pose the same question to you that I did to her. Who do
Mhm.
you feel is more narcissistic? There's no right or wrong answer. Obviously, I said, who do you feel is more narcissistic, men or women?
Honestly, I feel like that is not even a question that we could answer, because it's not about gender. It's about your environment that you're grown up in. Like, how do you feel? Every single human, male or female, feels different towards their perception of their environment, and the environment they're placed in is different, right? The only similarity is man or woman. When you're a child, you can't escape, can't fight back, can't leave. What can you do? Create a way to survive within what your means are. So every person can become a narcissist, but it's how you perceive it. That's that's it, personally.
Right. That. I get where you're going with it. It didn't answer the question, but I get where you're going with it. I get where you're going with it
Yeah,
because
and
it's honestly
I don't believe either or is
right.
more. I don't believe either or is more narcissistic. I believe that they both are pretty equal. Like, a lot of people hide it as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that, and that's fine. That's fine. I already stated my answer earlier. Which well, I still believe. So I know I didn't. I believe that they're even. I feel like in certain pockets, in certain areas, that different people are more narcissistic. I mean, the different between genders, they'll become. It has more narcissistic of a particular gender attached to it.
Hmm.
Like for
You know,
example, like social media,
yeah, you know what I
social
though?
like
Yeah, I believe that
Instagram.
because there's different like types of narcissists, right? Different ways that they
Yes.
approach, that protective layer. I believe that there are certain types that are more prone to women, and some that are more prone to men, because men are a little bit more aggressive naturally, and females are much more, mentally, patterning things and making like, things the way they want, whereas men are much more, come out about it, right? They bring it out at you. Women are much more, secretive about it. You know, I find.
Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes. That's. Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like guys, like as far as like athletics and sports, like I feel like in that arena, you know what I'm saying. Even like actors, I feel like they're more prone to being narcissists versus. I mean, even male entertainers, they're more prone to being narcissists than versus, like just like them people on Instagram. Just if you just took a bunch
Mhm.
of men and women and gave them Instagram, like I think you'd end up with more women as into developing narcissistic behaviors off of just the social interaction of being on Instagram and the validation of their beauty and what they perceive themselves as now because they have this like count attached to them. And I think for guys, I think it's a different type of narcissism as you stated. So yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like on social media, the thing that what happens is, so when we're having a conversation or an argument with a human being, you're usually like in front of them, right? So you can see their physical reaction, their body, their eyes, their like you can have a reaction, and your brain goes, "I know I'm talking to a human being." So you'll contemplate for a second what you're going to say or do, just because it's like that's a human in front of me. When you have this social media screen, that total idea of your brain's connection that I'm talking to a real human is kind of gone out the window. So your ability to jump to conclusions or say things on a whim, and go to such extreme levels of being that horrible to humans is because you're not really even thinking about the fact that there's another person on the end of this. Because there, to you, your brain, there isn't. There's nobody there. You're talking to a screen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
So that
Yep.
that
I.
ability, right, to be narcissistic is
Yep.
10 times more likely as you can.
Right. Right. I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. So, what was the thing we were talking about earlier when it came to narcissism? There was some. Oh yeah, I was talking about the story. I was talking about the story that I was talking. Were you here for when I gave the story?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so I'll try and give it to you again real fast. So basically this
Yeah.
there's an older gentleman. He goes to the store. So this is given from the perspective of the younger woman that was 38 that was there. He's 70. So she's giving the story on TikTok. So this is her. She said so she's there, she's pouring samplers and testers or whatever for some champagne or some alcohol or whatever, wine, whatever it was, in the store. It's a hot store. And so this older gentleman, she sees him, you know what I'm saying, enter, and he has a driver, you know what I'm saying, that helps him out the car or whatever. And then he gets out and then he goes in the store. He's walking around, he's getting his bottles or whatever, and he stops at her station. She's like, oh, I know he has money. I'm gonna I'm gonna flirt with him or whatever to try and get a tip or whatnot. You know. So she's flirting with him or whatever, and then she ends up giving him her number or whatever. So she gives him her number. Then she agrees to go on a date with him, and then they go on said date. um and they go to this really nice restaurant that she's never been to, and you know what I'm saying, they're getting drinks and food, they're having a great time or whatever. And then he asks her, hey, do you want to go to this other restaurant? And she's like, oh my god, I've never been to that restaurant before. Yes. You know, she's like, I can't afford that on my salary, but you know what I'm saying, she wanted to go. Now, this is her words. She says she can't afford it on her salary. So they go to the restaurant, she drives herself there. She gets there. They sit down. Obviously, he's well known by the people in the restaurant or whatnot. They're talking or whatnot. And at some point along in the date, she begins to flirt with the waiter in front of him. You know, and so he says
Mm.
to her, "Hey, I don't like that interaction. I feel disrespected by you doing that." That's his words. He said, I feel disrespected. And then she said, I feel like he's being a narcissist, and you know what I'm saying, by not wanting me to talk to anybody else, but you're on a date with him and you're literally flirting with someone else. I feel like at that point, I feel like she's more of the narcissist, because she only agreed to this because she seen he had money, and it was gonna be think she's gonna be able to do things that she normally could not do. You know, so I feel like in that scenario, I feel like she was wrong to call that man a narcissist when he was just looking out for himself, and he was just saying, hey, my feelings are hurt, which is a valid thing to say,
Yeah,
as, you know, as a
freaking right
man,
it's
like, hey,
valid. It's weird. They went on one date or 2 dates, whatever, and she's already jumping to
it was just,
conclusion about him being a narcissist. What do you know about this man other than he doesn't like you flirting on a date? Like that's all you really conclude about him, and that he's old, he has a driver. Like, what do you know about this man to be able to make an assumption or a judgment and like go online and spread this whole consumption that he is a narcissist? You don't know anything about him.
yeah. Yeah. That's how I felt about it, honestly. But I felt like they had a longer. I felt like she omitted a detail where they had a longer conversation. I felt like they talked more on the phone than she alluded to, because I felt like he felt like they had a more of a connection than she was leading on to. And you know what I'm saying, you know, and since he's an older guy and she's younger and she's coming on to him, you know what I'm saying, it makes him feel really good. Like, just like if it was an older woman and a younger man is coming on to her that she finds attractive, you know what I'm saying, she would feel, you know what I'm saying, like, oh my god, like, oh, this person's interested in me, you know, like, I don't have to die alone. Like, you start playing that thing in your head where you're like, oh, I don't have to die alone, like all those things you're playing into somebody's insecurities at that point. And I feel like that is a bit disingenuous and taking advantage of someone when you do things like that.
Well, of course. And on top of that, too, even if they did have a longer conversation, that's still literally does not dictate anything about her assumption of him being a narcissist or not, because literally a narcissist is not somebody that you automatically point out. It's somebody that you've had enough interactions with that you can see the little subtle things happening as time goes on, because that's what a narcissist is. They're not out in front of you saying, hey, I'm a narcissist. They're very smart about how they, how they come across, how they, get into a relationship or whatever they want out of it. They do it in such a precise way, because again, that's a protection, right? They're doing it in a way that's like, I have to have this control of, my environment so that I'm on complete, top. I'll never. So they're not going to come out and be like, hey, I freaking don't like. They'll be very, very slow and subtle about it. You know what I mean? And they will not do it in public. They don't do that. They do that behind closed doors, right? That's how they keep it hush hush. They do that shit in public, they're gonna get outed right away. Especially someone you barely know. I
Right.
can't. I just can't see it. My dad's a narcissist, so I can tell you, I have some experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but see, you to say that about your own parent or family member, like you have enough interactions with them to where you can make that determination. Hey, I've seen this person for
Exactly.
years. I feel like pretty this pretty on point. You know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I can tell you, like my dad's been there my whole life, and I know how I felt. I didn't understand it obviously for a long time. I just felt like there was something wrong with me, and that I was like, just like, what the hell? Why does he hate me? And I don't even think now that he hated me. I think again, he didn't have, the environment and like skills to give me what I needed from his childhood. So like he did not show me anything, but maybe deep down he does have this like want and empathy to care for me, but he just didn't know how. And on top of that, he was like so wrapped up in his own misery and his own fucking, like story that like it didn't matter, right? Like,
Right.
but
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Like so like for instance, like just on the tip of talking about like misdiagnosing people or just diagnose people without really knowing them, like I had someone start spreading rumors that I was autistic, and I was like, how can you even make that determination? Like I said, that is the most odd thing to do, and it's insulting to people that actually suffer from autism to then just group me in there with them when I have nothing that even is resembles anything like that. You're just making an assumption and saying this because you don't like something that I did, or how
yeah.
you don't like how I approach certain things.
It's
But
funny
that has
too, because that's
nothing to do with me.
their protective mechanism. They're doing things to, try and lower you, because they're like, hey, like I
Hmm.
don't want to be this weak person, so I'm gonna come at someone and try and knock them down a little, so I feel a little bit like I'm not so shitty. And they don't even sometimes realize they're doing it. They're doing it because there's this human idea that we have value of superior or inferior by what we have or what we do or what we say, and it's bullshit.
Hmm.
But that's what we like live by, this idea like we have to be more, popular, more hip, more friggin', cooler, have more things to be valuable.
Hmm.
So if you feel like you're low on that valuable scale, you're like, shit, I better knock someone down a peg so I don't feel so goddamn low, because society makes you feel like you're nothing if you don't have it, right?
Hmm.
It's all
Yeah.
bullshit. It's bullshit. It's not even real. Nothing else in the whole world lives by this value scale. Like a tree is a tree, whether it's a long branch or a short branch, doesn't fucking matter. It's both
Right.
important to the tree. An animal, this animal needed the male lions needed to protect the freaking, the whole pride when the time comes. But the females have their role. They need to freaking, hunt and whatever. But are either of them more or less important? No, they're both just as equally necessary for the whole thing to thrive.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just really wanted to like hammer that home. Like there's no place for people diagnosing people with
Hell
mental,
no.
like actually like physically trying to like say like, yo, this person is this and has this problem. Like no,
Yeah.
like that's, especially if they've never. I'm 31 years old. I and I function highly in almost every area of my life. So
Hmm.
and to say that I have something that when I've grown up around people that have that, and to say that I'm that, that's, I think that's disingenuous. And I think you can take this mentality and you can hop it over and go back to our topic, which is narcissism. You can't just start labeling people narcissists because you don't like something that they did. Like,
That's
I think
right. And so that
that's
all
one
these
side.
all these mental disorders and things that are popping up, all like ADHD, autism, bipolar, obedience disorder, like whatever all these things are, they're not even actually a brain imbalance. All it is actually your brain's created these patterns, created these neurological connections to survive. So they're adaptations to an unnatural environment that's taken
Hello.
people and needing, healthy, safe, unconditional love and the ability to be who we are and not be, punished or judged or, hated for it. And when we take that away from us, we create, fear and false, personalities and these people that are just like, I don't know, where to go or what to do because I don't feel like I can be myself. I don't feel like, you know, I can actually be worthy of love unless I'm what. And that's just where all these adaptations of ADHD. How do I get out of this feeling? I gotta throw my attention all over the place, scatter it. There's, autism again, so I'm gonna go inward, maybe not speak as much and feel overwhelmed by my environment. Like all these things are just your brain's way of coping, but every human being has a different way of perceiving and coping. Same with addiction. All these things are not really a disorder that you can't work on. It's just something that we need to say, hey, look, if this is happening in a child's brain at 8, 9 years old, what is going on within their environment that's causing them to need to create certain like behaviors? They're not bad people, but where are the behaviors coming from? Because they don't just do this because that's who they are. They're reacting to
Mm,
their, environment naturally.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree that a lot of this has everything to do with like our environment, um our environment that we are growing up in, that now
Yeah.
today's society. Because if everything pretty much goes in a cycle on this on earth, human beings go in a cycle, and if every human being going forward has not had this level of mental instability, what does that say about us? When we have we have the greatest health care than any previous generation. We have better money, better transportation. Everything is better than prior generations. Like we have relative peace. Obviously there's wars going on in a lot of different places. But as far as like Western society is concerned, we have relative peace. Nothing crazy is happening. Unless we're killing each other. And for us to have this level of mental instability, I think I think we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
Society.
we have most opportunities and the most, updated, ways of living than we ever have, but yet we're the most unhappy we've ever been. We're more suicidal. We're more, like stressed out and constantly on this like mindset of it's a threat-based mindset. Like you don't know what's actually dangerous and what's not anymore. We're afraid like, oh no, I'm late for this. Like that's not a threat. That's something that you have to make a decision
Hmm.
or deal with. That's not a threat. We go on to threat mode and we immediately go on like I gotta fight or flight. I gotta survive. These things that aren't necessarily meant for that. So when we go in that fight or flight, we trigger a stress response. So stress hormones flood your body, and that is so overwhelming for your organs. We're constantly stressed. So we're always pumping people full of medications, like stimulant medications and antipsychotics. All these medications are forms of cortisol and steroids, which are just forms of stress hormones because we're too stressed. Right? I think there's like all these disorders that are like hyper, thyroid, hypertension. Like that means like, hey, there's
Hmm.
way too much of this going on. That's what it's saying. Like, hello, there's stress, levels of stress that need to lower because our environment, the things that we're forced to do to just live, is too much on, one or two people, and the connections are gone. Social media doesn't connect us. It disconnects us in that way. You're not really with a person. You're creating, like you said, false profiles, false, parts of you. It's all this like fake identity, personality, trying to be something that the world wants. So inside you don't feel like, okay, I matter because I have to be this. And you don't want to go out in the real world because, oh my God, someone might find me out for all the fake things that I pretend to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's so much suicide and
Yeah,
stuff.
that last part where that you said, that fake stuff, that fake part, that fakeness that you pretend to, those personas that you put on, that you pretend to be, that aren't you, that you are at home. Man, I think that's big. I think that's a huge part of it. That right there, because I feel like a lot of people, yeah, I'm just gonna say this from what I've seen. So from what I've seen, a lot of people, they tend to gravitate to areas where they can feel important. You know what I'm saying? Or they feel comfortable. They feel relative status. They don't like uh going somewhere else and being no one. Nobody likes starting over. Like, most people prefer to stay in their environment and continue to thrive off of being the most popular person, or being the most affluent person or whatever in that area. You know what I'm saying? The only time where they will actually leave their home environment is when their home environment is just as uncomfortable as the new environment. But most of the time, people seem to gravitate to their home environment because that's where they feel the most comfortable, because they have the
Hmm.
most success and status there.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I said it all comes back to our childhood. So like when you're a child that can't, fight back, can't leave, like your whole dependence on survival is on these people that are supposed to, you know, give you guidance, care for you, keep you safe, but also like accept you for who you are as you figure that out. But we're taught like don't, have that behavior. Don't do this, be that. Don't be this, don't be that. You can't have behavior, you can't have feelings, you can't, not succeed. And that's immediately telling a child you are not lovable the way you are. You don't get love unless you do what I say. And that's what we teach them. And that's why everybody creates false identities, because that sense of self is immediately rejected before you're usually even 3 years old.
Hmm. And I think that also comes into like things where you can't be yourself at home and you have to be yourself somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can't feel comfortable in your own home, you have to be who you really are at school, or maybe you can't even be who you really are at school. And a lot of people, I feel like that's why you have a lot of people where they end up finding themselves when they go to college, or as they become adults and like actually work, and they get somewhere in front of new people where they can actually be themselves, and in quote unquote, for people that knew them previously, redefine themselves. But really, you're just being who you naturally were in the first place.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We need to start realizing that kids just need to be allowed to like feel what they feel, whether they get the thing that they want or not. You can be like, no, you're not getting that, like that's not gonna happen, but like be mad about it, right? You don't time out, put them in like a room alone because they're taking a temper tantrum. Like, why can't they be mad about it? Who freaking cares? That's fine, because what we do is we tell them like, no, you're not allowed to have feelings, so go be by yourself to deal with it. I'm not going to be here with you, which tells them I'm not lovable, I'm confused, and I'm my most uncomfortable and vulnerable, and no one's here for me. I
Right,
can't live like that, so I'm gonna like no, turn myself into something else to survive, right? It's a human response.
right, right. And that goes into them. That goes into them wanting to be with be oh my god, hold on, what am I trying to say right now? That goes into them not feeling, that goes into where people do things to appease other people, to be
Yep.
loved, and it's taught even as early as a child. Like, that's immediately what I heard as soon as you said that. I'm like, man, that's crazy. Because when you look
Yep.
at like people's behavior, you know what I'm saying, especially children, like they'll always turn to their parents for like validation in a way. You know what I'm saying? When
Hmm.
you should be building up your child in a way where they don't have to turn to you for validation. They should be able to function and trust themselves enough to where they can be themselves out there and really know that they're doing the right thing. But instead, they have to always turn to you for validation.
It's giving them a sense of like confidence that like no matter what happens in life, things are going to not go the way I want always, but when it doesn't go my way, I'm not alone. So I know that I have enough, stability within myself to handle things. So therefore, when shitty things happen, they learn to what's called regulate. They regulate through it, like knowing this emotion will pass. This has an end. Like, right, this doesn't last forever. I can deal through it and get to the end and know that I'm gonna move on from it. But most of us don't do that because we're left alone with that pain. So we go, I can't handle it. It's too overwhelming. We escape. We tune out. We whatever, right? To get away from that pain of being alone and stressed and overwhelmed and scared. And that just continues into adulthood is what happens. But we don't even notice it, right? It's natural. It's an instinctual reaction. Like I can't handle this too much. We don't have that regulation of this will pass. This will pass. I can get through it. Like there's a way.
Hmm. Yeah.
And by being there with your kids, by being basically a person of support. Like I don't care if you don't like it, there's consequences. Yes, I'm not happy, but I'm not leaving you. You're not alone. Like you'll see that me and you will get, like, this will be over and I'll be here still. I'll still be here. That gives them a sense of, okay, if my mom can be calm with me through this, then I can do it. Like their little minds think like that. They do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's well in order for the way that we parent to be like retaught. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like people should have to go through like a sort of like parenting course, but I don't know who's gonna govern that and make sure it's correct. Because like you could easily have a parenting course that makes things worse. But I feel like it definitely should be start with your child as a human being still, even though they might not be able to think at the same level as you. They're still a human being, and everything that you do to them will affect their outcome going forward.
Oh, literally. I'm telling you, it's so much simpler than they make it. Like pediatricians and specialists and everybody that tells you like put your kid on timeout and take things away from them, whatever. All you're doing is, yes, it works because if you tell your kid like I'm not going to be here with you if you don't do as I say, well, a kid needs you. So they're going to obviously, you know, do what you say for a little while because they need you, but they're doing it because they're afraid of you, or they're doing it because they're told to, not because they're learning something where they're like, oh, okay, I want to be with you. You give me a safety, you give me a trust. I feel open to be with you even when I'm bad. So when you don't give a kid that, they go and look for that sense of safety elsewhere, which turns into usually their peers, right? And that's where you see all these gangs or these social media bullies, or like kids that are just like doing these really horrible things because kids are now looking at other kids for their role.
Man, I think you're gonna feel like looking at other kids for their like sense of like validation or what's right and what's wrong. Man, that's really good. I think that's a good note to end on. There's actually some other thing that came up that I need to get to right now. But if you like these audios, files or whatever, these conversations, please make sure to give me a follow. I'll be back with more of these, maybe a part two of this, or maybe a totally different question. I might run back the first question that I had of the day earlier. I might run that topic back. But thank you all for listening. If you want to check out my podcast, just click the links in my bio. We have conversations just like this all the time, every Wednesday and Saturday, and they're posted on my YouTube channel and on every podcast platform possible. Um, and the name of the podcast is Homeroom with Smooth. Thank you all for listening. I'm out.